Welcome back to the channel. We're here in the shop. We've got everything covered up. And the reason we got everything covered up is we want to try out the new ArcCaptain Cut 50 plasma cutter that we just got. This is not the newest one. They've got a Cut 55 that has a pilot arc. This one you have to make contact to get it to arc, and I've never fooled with a plasma cutter before. I've only used them a couple of times in my life. I don't know much about setting them up or how they work or anything like that, so Matt's dropped by. He's going to help me out here, and we're going to try on this. I'm not sure how thick this metal is. I think it's somewhere around 16 gauge or something. We're going to see how it cuts, try to figure out the air pressures, and this is I guess it's a contact arc or drag arc or whatever. It don't have a pilot arc, so you actually have to make contact with the metal to make it start cutting. And then we're going to start off around probably 35 pounds of air pressure. It may be too much, or may not be enough. I don't know. We'll find out. We're going to check it out. I know this thing's 55 amp. We've got it on 30, which is probably way too much for this metal. We're also going to set it on 2T. It has a setting for 2T and 4T. And 2T is when you mash the trigger, it's on. When you let off the trigger, it's off. 4T is when you mash the trigger, it comes on and stays on. You can let off the trigger. And then you have to hit the trigger a second time to actually turn it off. So we're going to leave it on 2T for learning. So when we got it mashed, it's on. When we let off of it, it's off. We're going to try that. It's only got one other preference here. You can change your pulse gas, or how long the air runs after you let off the trigger. So and then it's got your amp setting. So it's on 30, and we're going to go with 30 and see what that does. Matt is kind of familiar with these, but he's got his dark sunglasses on. Does have a knit boggin on, which is flammable, but he told me to make sure we always got, if we're going to have a boggin on, have something like this. I could use one of these little welding hats, but they're not really burn proof either. They're just good to wear under your helmet. So let's give it a try here. He's going to just strike his arc and see how it cuts. He's using a straight edge as a straight line. Looks like it's kind of hot. Probably drag a little faster, it looks like. Well, that's a pretty clean edge. And he used a straight edge. So if you do use a straight edge, you got to make sure that you use the distance. You measure the distance from your tip to the edge and offset your line, because it's probably got about 1/8, not hardly a quarter, but a little more than 1/8 or 3/16 between the hole and the side. And you've got to account for that when you put your straight edge down. So it seems to have cut really good. There's very little slag, and it just fell right off. So I imagine we could go, we're going to reset our guide here, and we could probably go down on our amperage a little. We're going to keep turning it down till we see what the lowest we can is. Because when he first started that arc, it really melted right there. So we're going to try it with a little bit less amps, and maybe even a little less air pressure. I think we're on about 35 pounds air pressure. And this is just almost 40. This is just plugged into a 110 outlet, because I don't have any, I've got the cords and stuff for a 220, but I've not put a breaker in yet. So he's moving his line. We're going to try a little bit further. Okay, we've got it turned down to 25 amps, and I didn't turn the air down any. So we're going to try it at 25 amps and see if it cuts it's been really hot, you can see. We're going to see if it cuts a little bit better, cleaner line. Or it may not cut as good. He's going to give it a try here. Doesn't seem as blue, but I'm thinking we might be able to go, I don't know, do you think we're getting enough air pressure?
Yeah, that's fine. Look at your slag down here on the bottom. Really not got that much, but we're not cutting a very thick
so
material.
So it's blowing all the crap off, but it's not blowing holes, so I guess we're going to keep our, which one was the last cut? So that has a lot more.
I moved a lot faster though. It all goes
Yeah.
back to speed.
Well, speed might be, we might be able to go up on there and go a little bit faster.
If you've got thicker material, it takes longer for it to blow the material out of the way.
Let's go one more cut. I'm going to turn this air up slightly. Hit that trigger just a second, but don't touch it to nothing. Oh, shoot, it's dropping all the way down to 30. It's not going up. Maybe it's going to go backwards with it. I must not have it set very high at the compressor. Let me go check the compressor. It's down way up there now. I have my tank on my compressor too low. It's at 40 pounds. Hit your trigger once. Oh, it's okay. We'll try it right there. And we're going to keep the amps the same. Is it 25 amps?
Yes.
We'll get this set up. We'll be right back. Well, Matt's got this set at 1 inch exactly. So he's going to drag his cutter across it. We're going to measure the final piece and see how much it takes off. So if it's 1 inch and you set it on 1 inch, we ought to be able to know how much it takes off by the width of the tip. So it's either going to take an 1/8 or 3/16. We'll find out. He's going to drag it through there and see. Okay, so we turned the air pressure up to a little over 40 pounds. Let's see if it's got any slag on the back. I don't know which side was which, but one definitely has less.
Side here. This is top, so you don't see no slag there. This is your slag on your bottom.
So was it this one or that one, I wonder? I don't know. We're going to measure and see how much. So it only takes, a little bit over 1/8 of an inch off?
Looks like 2/16 or 2/8. Is it 8?
2/8. That'd be 1/4. It didn't take much, so a person would have to allow for that if they want an inch wide piece.
Yeah.
You probably have to add about 1/8 of an inch.
1 1/8.
A little over 1/8.
Set your fence at 1 1/8 and go.
Or 3/6, probably 3/6. Like we said before, it's probably 3/16. But that ruler doesn't have 16ths on it. But that's not that hot at all. There's nothing on the bottom. Just a tiniest little bit of lip. So more air pressure at 25 amps on this, I think 16 gauge. A little more, we went up on air pressure, down on the amps. 25 done just fine. And the air pressure around 45 blew just about everything off. It made it clean. So this is not hot at all. The mat drug through it pretty quick. So I would imagine this is the one at about 30 pound. And this one is probably more on the 45 pound because it blew way more, made a way cleaner cut. And it all depends on the speed too, I guess. But it looked like it was blowing more stuff to the floor whenever he was doing it that last time. So this ain't exactly where you need to cut it or how you need to cut it or anything, but definitely made a difference. Now this is this is thinner. This is car hood. This is probably more like a piece of car hood's probably more like 20 gauge, but it's got glue on it. I don't know how you're gonna cut this. I'm just gonna cut down the side here. That's got the
22 gauge is what we were just cutting.
Is that 22?
Yep, 22 gauge, plain steel.
Well, that's really thin. I sure thought it was 16 gauge, but the edges are burred over, so it's really kind of hard to tell how thick it is.
That's made by Stanley, 22 gauge. This is a 24 by 12 sheet, which we cut a bunch off.
Yeah, I don't have a sheet metal gauge, so I don't know what's what. I just guess it, but I thought it was a lot thicker than that. So it's probably about the same thickness as this piece, more than likely. Matt's going to cut a piece out of this car hood here, but it's got some rubber on the bottom, so it may blow plastic everywhere. We'll see how it does. He's going to try to pierce a hole. Watch your eyeballs. It sure stinks. It's that plastic burning, I guess. Well, it's not a perfectly round hole, but it's a hole if you're having to blow a hole in something. Now, I've got some 1/4 inch. I'd like to cut a piece of that 1/4 inch. That's the thickest metal I've got, I believe. I think this is not hardly a 1/4. I should say what it is. 3/16. That's 3/16 there.
Yeah.
And I bet you that's exactly the thickness of that tip. Let's measure it. Don't hit your trigger, whatever you do. Is it from the tip to the hole? I believe it is. I believe it's 3/16. So we're going to go with that anyway. When we start setting up our guide, it'll be real close.
You want to see how it cuts a piece of 3/16?
I want to see it cut some 1/4. I got some 1/4 over there in that box. There's some 1/4 inch angle iron. Don't use plastic clamps, but you know, for demonstration purposes only. We got it grounded to the table. Matt's going to try. Let's see, it's on 25 right now, right? Mm-hmm. About 45 pound air pressure. See how it does on 25. See if it'll cut this 1/4 inch angle. If not, we'll crank it up to about 30. And this is still plugged into 110. Not going through it, is it? Turn the amps up a little bit. Oh, it's not going through it. Turn it up at least 30, maybe 35.
It's 35 right there. See if we can
Start a new spot.
Yeah, start a new spot.
Boy, that stinks. Not going through. I think we got plenty of air, just not enough amps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you held it there, it'll eventually carve its way through.
Yeah. Go all the way up to 50.
35 is what we got.
Oh, it'll only go to 35 on 110. Ah, I forgot that. The compressor's on. Okay, plugged into a 110, I can only get 35 amps out of this plasma cutter. But since that's what probably going to run it on most of the time, we turned the air up to 50. We might turn it up to 60. We're going to try 50 pound pressure at 35 amps and see if we can go ahead and blow through this this 1/4 inch angle, which in the corner that 1/4 inch is a little thicker than a 1/4 inch. So he's going to try it again, see if he can burn all the way through it. Just melting it. Just making lava. Uh-oh, there went the breaker.
Won't do it.
So it won't do it. It kicked the breaker out. Too much juice. Yeah, it overdid it. It kicked the breaker off. It will cut it, but God, what a watered out mess. So that's 1/4 inch angle iron. Maybe a little thicker than 1/4 inch. But it definitely cuts the stuff that we're going to cut. We're going to cut sheet metal and stuff. And I didn't try to cut this 3/16. It probably will cut it, but it's just time for me to go ahead and bite the bullet and put an outlet in. So if you're planning on cutting big metal with this little cut 50, we got it. Oh yeah, it just maxes out. So that's all it'll do on 110 is 35 amps. and we got it. I got the air pressure turned way up, and it's still, we couldn't get it to go through this very good. Matt was having to chisel it, and then it just overheated and kicked the breaker out. So much for that. We give it a shot, but it does cut what I want it to do anyway. I want to cut thin metal. And I know there's some little brackets that are like 1/8 inch. I use these little tabs all the time that I weld on stuff. And I want to be able to make those. I think they're about 1/8 of an inch thick. That's plenty for that. Should work, but we've reached the limits as far as 110. It definitely won't cut this piece of angle iron, but we give it a shot. Well, anyway, that's our look at this ArcCaptain Cut 50. I can understand now why their new plasma cutters are the Cut 55, and they've got pilot arcs. That's probably just a little bit better machine. This is their older one. It's been out a little more than a year, but for the home hobbyist, it's probably pretty handy. You can do a lot of stuff with it. But I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all for hanging out with me and us doing our little experiments. But that's all I got for you guys today. Stay clean, everybody.